For many hundreds of years, the word Sparta meant perfect in battle. Fear filled every place that the Hellenic world touched with that name. They were like the wolves of Greece, trained from birth, weakened, and turned into live weapons. They taught their kids that coming back without a shield was worse than dying on one. Their women didn't sing about love, they sang about death and duty. Sparta was more than just a city, it was a bloody faith. After they won the Peloponnesian War, that belief seemed to last forever. The sound of Spartan flutes brought Athens low and tore down its walls. Once proud, Corinth and Thebes now bowed down to their rule. They walked like kings everywhere in Greece when they were sent by the Spartans. They didn't build their kingdom on trade or diplomacy. Instead, they used fear and the threat of bronze marching in formation to do it. Their formation was what made people afraid. Perfectly shaped, it looked like rows of bronze-clad soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder, with each man's shield protecting the one next to him. They were regimented, cruel, and perfectly in sync with each other, making them an unbreakable wall. When they moved forward, the ground seemed to shake. No force had been able to break it in more than 200 years. But beauty that has already been reached is already dying. The Spartans were hooked on their story. They thought their way of fighting was holy, and that the gods had blessed the Phalanx. Innovation was not allowed. Questioning the old ways of doing things was treason. So while the rest of the world changed, Sparta stayed in its own shade, sure that no human hand could ever break its machine. But in the north, one city started to see through the trick. Thebes, whose name few would have dared use in the same sentence as Sparta's, had been ruled by them for a long time. Thebes was once proud and full of life, but attack and occupation broke it down. In the middle of it, a Spartan garrison stood, representing the will of men who looked down on freedom and praised order. But being oppressed makes fires. And something new was taking shape under that fire. In secret rooms and meetings where people muttered, a man from the Thebes rose up who was unlike any other fighter Sparta had ever seen. That was his name, Epaminondas. He wasn't born into a noble family. His strength and volume were not the best. His mind was what made him dangerous. He saw war not just as chaos or bravery, but also as mathematics. He looked at battle patterns like a philosopher looks at the stars. He knew what the Spartans didn't. That practice that is perfect leads to death. That the Phalanx, for all its greatness, had one deadly flaw. It couldn't change. Epaminondas praised thought more than conformity, while Sparta praised conformity. He taught his troops not to just do what he said, but to think, act, and fight like people, not like machines. Pelopidas, his brother-in-arms, stood next to him. He was the heart of Theban resistance. He was brave, charismatic, and had no fear at all. They would work together to make the weapon that would bring down a kingdom. The first spark was made in 379 BC. Pelopidas sneaked into Thebes with a group of refugees while pretending to be a traveler. In one bloody night of revolt, they killed the Spartan governors and set the city free. The defenses gave up. Thebes was set free. Flags of Sparta were taken down from the walls and thrown into the streets when dawn came. People in Thebes breathed clean air for the first time in decades, and everything changed. Sparta was furious and vowed to get even. They sent army after army north, ready to put an end to this rude behavior. But each attack made the Thebans even more determined. Every field that the Spartans burned was paid for in steel. And among the people of Thebes, something very special was taking shape. The Sacred Band. A brotherhood that wasn't based on birth, but on love and loyalty. 300 fighters swore to fight and die together with their loved ones. Their union wasn't based on facts, but on feelings. They were brave not because they were afraid of getting caught, but because they loved each other. The Phalanx could never make a copy of their heart, but in Epaminondas' mind they became the heart's soul. Thebes became more brave. Their methods changed over time and became different from anything Greece had seen. They trained with their lines spread out, played around with depth and formation, and looked at the land as if it were a weapon. When it came to war, Epaminondas thought that angles, not numbers, were what won. It's possible to break a line. A mind couldn't. By 371 BC, things were very tense. Because their campaigns had failed, Sparta chose to end it all for good. King Cleombrotus I marched north with almost 10,000 men from Lacedaemon's army. Among them were the best Spartiates, who had the cleanest Spartan blood. They were sure of themselves. They thought they were marching not to war but to a ritual. One more win that would be written into history. They met Epaminondas on the plains of Leuctra, a peaceful Boeotian field that would soon become a place where gods were buried. When the two forces faced each other, it was amazing how different they were. The Spartans shone in their shiny bronze and red cloaks. They were perfectly lined up and had practiced their moves over and over again. The Thebans were fewer and rougher, and their shields and armor were damaged from years of revolt. But they had a fire in their eyes. Everyone in the world held their breath at that moment. Everyone who looked thought the result was certain. The forces that Sparta beat before were stronger. Just their image could break down morale. Soldiers from Thebes said prayers in their heads while holding their spears tighter. They could feel history shaking under their feet. Epaminondas, on the other hand, saw something else. Others saw an insurmountable problem, but he saw a chance. That night, as campfires burned across the plain, he got his officers together. He made lines in the dirt in front of him that were not straight but at an angle. In a calm, quiet voice, he told them something they couldn't even imagine. Tomorrow they wouldn't fight like Greeks. As if they were scientists of death, they would fight. He was going to change the shape of the line. Instead of matching the Spartan line equally, he would tilt his formation, putting 50 ranks of his strongest troops on the left flank to deal one final blow. Some whispered that it was suicide. Others thought it was crazy, but Epaminondas had a smile. He had looked at Sparta's perfection for a long time and knew what made it weak. They were locked up by their unity. Their pride wouldn't let them change. And when his hammer hit the ground, it wouldn't hit their army but their soul. Before dawn, the mist moved across the fields of Leuctra. The Spartans clenched their teeth, but they had no idea that the end of the world was near. Thebes had made its own weapon, and that tool was thought of. The sun rose over Leuctra like a blade sliding across the sky, sharp, merciless, and ready to cut. The morning mist curled along the plain, masking the shapes of thousands of men preparing to kill or be killed. Armor clanked softly. Horses snorted. The tension was so thick it felt alive, tightening around throats and spears alike. On one side of the field, the Spartans gathered in flawless ranks, bronze shields glinting in neat symmetry. Their crimson cloaks fluttered behind them like the wings of a single monstrous creature. They were the perfection of discipline, a machine made of flesh, sharpened by centuries of ritual and obedience. On the other side, Thebes formed a line that looked almost wrong, asymmetrical, uneven, crooked. The left flank was impossibly deep. 50 ranks of warriors stacked like a human wall, the sacred band standing at its core. The rest of the line thinned out awkwardly, folding backward in a slanted formation that seemed to defy every rule of Greek warfare. Spectators from other Greek cities whispered, "What is this? Madness? Is Epaminondas trying to lose?" This is not how hoplites fight. They were correct. It wasn't. It was how Sparta would die. Epaminondas watched the plain from horseback, his expression unreadable. The rising sun cast a halo of gold behind him, but there was no divinity in his eyes, only calculation. To him, the Spartans weren't gods, they were a pattern. And today he would break that pattern. A horn sounded, then another. The ground vibrated as both armies began to march. The Spartans advanced as one, shields locked so tightly that sunlight barely passed between bronze edges. Their spears angled forward like the teeth of a single beast. Dust rose in synchronized waves beneath their feet. Their confidence radiated through the air like heat. Meanwhile, the Theban advance looked slow, almost lumbering. Their massive left flank pushed forward like a battering ram, while the thinner right flank lagged intentionally behind. To an untrained eye, it appeared as though they were stumbling into a mistake. But the truth was the opposite. They were steering the Spartans into a trap as old as geometry itself. Cleombrotus, the Spartan king, rode near the front. He narrowed his eyes at the strange formation. His officers murmured concerns, but pride suffocated doubt. "Hold the line," he commanded. "We are Sparta." It would be the last lie he ever believed. The first collision. When the two front lines met, the sound split the air like thunder. Bronze smashed against bronze. Screams burst from crushed lungs. The earth shook beneath the violence of the collision. The Spartans expected the usual push. Two equal walls straining, grinding, testing each other. But what slammed into them was not a wall. It was an avalanche. The Theban left flank, 50 ranks deep, surged forward with a force no Greek army had ever attempted. The sheer weight of bodies behind the front line created unstoppable momentum. Spears bent, shields cracked. Spartan veterans stumbled backward in disbelief. This was not the orderly struggle they had trained for. This was brute physics, Epaminondas' masterpiece in motion. The sacred band drove into the Spartan right flank like a bronze spearhead. Every pair fought with terrifying unity, protecting one another, pushing as one. Their spears darted like lightning strikes. Their shields rang under Spartan blows. But their formation did not wobble. It pressed harder, fueled by loyalty deeper than any Spartan law. Dust erupted around them. Sunlight flashed off broken metal. The clash became a storm. The crumbling of the perfect line. Cleombrotus tried to rally his front ranks. "Push forward!" But they couldn't. The depth of the Theban formation made their shove unstoppable. The Spartans were being peeled apart. Their right flank, the elite, the purest Spartiates, the pride of Lacedaemon, began to bulge backward, shields angling awkwardly, formation warping under pressure. Sparta had no tactic for this, no drill, no sacred ritual. Their entire system assumed that their phalanx would always be stronger. Today it wasn't. Epaminondas gave the signal. Theban cavalry swept around the flanks, preventing Spartan reinforcements from tightening the line. They kicked up dust clouds that blinded the advancing enemy. The battlefield became a maze of confusion. Then came the moment that broke the myth forever. The death of a king. A spear slipped through the chaos and struck Cleombrotus in the chest. He staggered. Spartan bodyguards rushed to him, trying to hold the line while dragging their wounded king away. But the Theban column pressed harder. The Spartans around him began to fall. Cleombrotus collapsed into the dirt, blood soaking his cloak. The cry tore across the battlefield. "The king is down!" Panic, real panic, rippled through the Spartan ranks. For the first time in generations, the warriors of Sparta felt something they had been trained to kill inside themselves: fear, the collapse. The Theban advance became relentless. Ben screamed. Shields shattered. The weight of 50 ranks crushed the Spartan right flank completely. Once that pillar fell, the rest of the army crumpled like rotting wood. Spartans tried to reorganize. They tried to retreat. They tried to resist, but the battlefield had turned into a slaughterhouse. The Thebans carved their way through the phalanx with methodical brutality. Bodies piled, spears snapped. Blood soaked the ground until the dirt became mud. The legendary discipline of Sparta dissolved under the pressure of an idea. The idea that someone, at last, had outthought them. The aftermath, when the Spartan army finally broke and scattered across the hills of Boeotia. What remained on the plain was not merely defeat. It was extinction. 700 Spartiates, the elite core of Spartan society, lay dead in heaps. Their loss was catastrophic. Sparta's warrior population had never been large. Their strength rested on purity of lineage, strict breeding rules, and a closed caste system. Losing 700 was not a wound. It was amputation. The myth of Spartan invincibility died with them. As the sun began to fall, Epaminondas stood among the bodies. Wind tugged at his cloak. The smell of bronze, sweat, and blood filled the air. He had done what no one else dared to imagine. He had shown Greece, and the world, that the phalanx could break, that Sparta could bleed. That perfection was a lie. The battlefield of Leuctra remained silent, but its silence screamed a truth that would shake every empire to come. No tradition is eternal, no army is invincible, and no myth survives the man who learns how to kill it.